Hey everyone, I'm your host Adrian. We do content like this weekly, so hit the subscribe button and ring the bell to get notified. If you want more content like this, click the like button and please leave a comment. Thanks again for watching. Thanks everyone so much for joining us. We can go ahead and jump right in, and welcome to today's Rupa Live class presented by Rupa University, the best way to learn about specialty lab works from industry experts. My name is Adrian Martinez, and today we have a very, very special guest with Dr. Yael Jaffe here to talk to us about how to use genetics to determine the best functional test, the chicken and the egg. Before jumping in, a couple of quick housekeeping items. Everyone joining will be muted by default, but if you do have any questions, please use that Q&A button down in the menu bar, and we will host a live Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Immediately following the Q&A, yours truly will show you exactly how to order these tests directly on Rupa Health. And if you have to jump early, no worries at all. We always record these sessions, and we'll go ahead and send you out a copy as well as upload it to rupauniversity.com within the coming days. And also, if you are a fan of this type of content, be sure to check out rupauniversity.com to get access to all the previous sessions that we have done, including those with Yael here. But with that, let's go ahead and jump in. I'd like to introduce Dr. Yael Jaffe. Yael is globally acknowledged as a leading expert in the field of genetics and is at the forefront of nutrigenomic education. She has helped develop and supervise nutrigenomics courses around the world, including her own Manuka and 3x4 education courses, which have trained thousands of healthcare practitioners globally. She is formerly teaching nutrigenomics at Rutgers University and MUIH. She is the founder and chief science officer at 3x4 Genetics, which is what we're here today to talk about. So Yael, thank you so much for joining us. I will go ahead and let you take it from here.
I had a quick look at the names and I was very excited to see some of our 3x4 practitioners there and super excited that they're part of Rupa's. A great way to start. So I challenged myself in the talk today to think about this idea of the chicken and the egg. And what we're really trying to do is trying to understand, how do you use genetics to be able to choose the best functional test? So I want you to hang in there with me. We're going to take a bit of a journey. It's not going to be giving you the answer in the first couple of slides, but hopefully we're going to learn something along the way. So this was a presentation I gave about a month ago. One of the clinicians in the audience asked this question, and I am presenting it with her permission. And it was a great question. You know, how does genetic testing change my clinical approach? It seems that everything I'm looking at in genetics is kind of being addressed in functional tests. So why would I do a genetic test? So I thought, well, that was a great question to start with, because really that is exactly what we're trying to answer here today. So here's my very famous chicken and egg, and we're going to have a look at understanding what is the relationship, obviously, between genetics and functional tests and chicken and eggs. So I'm going to go back and I'm just going to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we all understand some very key concepts to be able to answer our chicken and egg conversation. So going back to basics, when we talk about health, and it doesn't matter whether it's optimal health, it's a disease prevention, it's managing chronic disease, there are two parts to the equation: genetics and epigenetics. And when we put the two together, we really kind of figure out what is the health journey. So let's just remind ourselves, when we talk about genetics, we're talking about DNA sequence code and the variability. So whether you call them polymorphisms or gene variants or SNPs, whenever we talk about genetics, we're talking about a change in the code, or what I often refer to as a spelling change in the code. So genetic variation gives us insight into who we are and how we respond to the world around us, or who your patients are and how they respond, whether it's to supplements, nutrition, toxins, mold, trauma, stress, exercise. That is the insight that we gain when we look at genetic variations in a test like the 3x4 blueprint and understand more about who our patient is. Epigenetics is it's above genetics. It is not about the sequence code of our DNA. It's not about our blueprint. It's about how our genes switch on and off, or put another way, how our genes express themselves. And literally, it's a bunch of switches that are switched on and off depending on what is happening in our environment. And the reason I state this, epigenetics determines action is because look at all the things that are going to impact your epigenetics. So we used to think that it was only nutrition or maybe some supplements, maybe some pharmaceuticals that switched on and switched off genes. But now we know that pretty much every single thing that you are exposed to every single minute of every single day is switching on and switching off genes, from social interaction, disease exposure, microbiome, toxins, mood. All of these things will change your epigenetics. They will change your gene expression. So let's put it together again. Initially, we had an equation that said if we have genetics, with our epigenetics, it'll determine our health journey. But because epigenetics is about exposure, all those different things that you saw on the slide before, it's really about choice. It's about the foods we choose to eat, the supplements we choose to take, the exercise we choose to do, the exposures we tend to have. So I think you're getting the picture that really epigenetics correlates with the choices we make every single minute of every single day. So suddenly the equation is looking a little bit different, and something that our patients can now relate to. When we look at our genetics and we look at the choices that we're making, we will be able to understand how that is impacting our health. And normally I would kind of stop here and say, this is really the equation that we're going to work with. But today I'm going to give you one more slide. And that is about metabolites. And I use the word, metabolites, because really I'm thinking of biomarkers. And biomarkers and metabolites in my world are everything that is being tested in a functional test or in a blood test or in any test that you're doing that's sitting in the Rupa platform. So now we're adding another angle. We're saying that we're looking at genetics to understand the insight of who we are. We're looking at the choices the patient is making to determine which genes will be switched on and which switched off. And ultimately, this is going to drive health, but we're able to measure and quantify how that health looks by using biomarkers or metabolites that we can measure. Okay, so I hope that kind of sets the scene that we're all on the same page. But now I'm going to go back and tell you why I believe the chicken and the egg is a very interesting conversation, and why I obviously personally believe that there is a great deal of value in this concept called genes first. And the genes first idea, which we teach very often, is the idea of using genetics as a screening tool. Now, I was going to put a big question mark, left it off the side, saying like, why would we use genetics as a screening tool? Okay, why would we use it up front? And I'm going to introduce you to 4 concepts of why genetics should be used as a screening tool. And then I'm going to use case study to show you what it actually looks like in practice when we use a genes first approach. So the first thing is know where to start. And usually above order clinicians, you would do an assessment, you'd ask a lot of brilliant questions, you would look at medical history, dieting history, sociodemographic, like everything you can find about space. And yet there is this big question of, I have all this information about my patient, but where am I going to get the greatest impact? So I talk about the 80-20 rule. Where can we change 20% of what our patient is doing and have an 80% impact? And the one thing genetics is able to do is to be able to guide at a kind of a molecular level where we should start. So that's point number 1. And the reason we want to know, point number 1, where to start, is because what we're trying to avoid is going down a rabbit hole or the trial and error. And a lot of medicine was built, and nutrition was built on the concept of this trial and error. Let's just try this plan. And if it doesn't work, come back and we'll adjust it. Or even worse, we go down one rabbit hole with lots of treatments and interventions and supplements, only to find out that we went down the wrong rabbit hole. So how can we reduce our trial and error so that we can be more likely to know that we've hit that 80% with the 20% interventions that we want to do? So that's point number 1. And this is how we believe the best way to do it. We talk about the concept of pathway-based analysis, which is a 3x4 term, but is really based on the idea of polygenic risk scores. So the days of genetic tests being based on the idea that one SNP should determine a diet or lifestyle intervention has passed us by. And what we're really interested in now is grouping our genes together, looking at gene variants that are working in a particular biochemical or metabolic pathway, adding them up as a score, which is where we come up with the concept of polygenic risk scores, a very well-validated methodology, and figuring out for your patient, where are the genes having the greatest, or the genetic variants, I should say, having the greatest impact. And you can see in the background, I know you can't see it closely, but at 3x4, we have this concept of follow the purple. Whenever we see dark purple or purple, we immediately think of genetic impact. That is where the genes are having the greatest impact. So there are 36 pathways divided into 6 categories, starting with a very kind of functional medicine systems approach, start at cellular, upstream, move down to systems, cardiovascular health systems, energy, activity, and then nutrients. And what we're really trying to identify is which of these metabolic or biochemical pathways are being most impacted by the genetics that would give us insight on where to start. Okay, so this is just an example of the back of our report of a polygenic risk score. And you can see these are cellular pathways, detox, inflammation, methylation, oxidative stress. In this individual, which is a sample report, you actually see that they got, well, it's actually not the sample report, it's the case study we're going to be looking at. They got a lot of purple happening. Remember, purple is impact. Dark purple has the highest impact, light purple, the second highest. And even the gene variants, even though you can't see the detail, will be telling us which genes are having the greatest contribution to having a high impact biochemistry. So that's really point one, is know where to start. Now, the second one, which is one of my favorite, is you don't know what you don't know. And one of the things that we're very particular about is when we're trying to decide which genes get put into our genetic test, we have methodology based on something called Darwin. And Darwin is a set of 8 criteria that help us score objectively whether a gene variant belongs in a genetic test or not. And the last criteria of Darwin asks the question, will this genetic information give me something to make a better and different clinical decision for my patient than if I didn't have the genetic information? So what is the clinical utility? And this comes down to this question. You don't know what you don't know. So what's gem, that little clinical gem, that great insight that you can gather from genetics as a screening tool right up front that'll help you make you go down the right rabbit hole and know where to start? And I'm going to give you some examples. The third principle of Genes First is targeted supplementation. So one of the challenges of being an integrative or functional or lifestyle medicine practitioner is that we really value supplements, but we also don't want to send our patient home with a bucket full of supplements and a huge bill at the end that is really overwhelming and intimidating and unaffordable. So how do we choose the supplements, again, that 80-20 rule, that are going to have the greatest impact on achieving the health goals that we're after? So we'll look a little bit at an example of that. And then, of course, it brings us to our number 4, which is why we are here today. And that is the idea of precision functional testing. We love functional testing at 3x4, and we'll show you why. But again, like targeted supplementation, we want to make sure that as practitioners, you have the information you need to make the best possible decisions on which functional tests to order to be able to be as precise as possible, less trial and error, and managing the cost for your patients. So now I'm going to introduce you to a case report, who is Rachel. So Rachel is 55 years old. I was a little bit upset with my design team because I'm 54 and I hope I don't look like Rachel. So I think we aged her somewhat, and she could have been a lot kind of younger looking and funkier, even though we have the same color hair. She has a history of joint pain, which she suffers from regularly, hot flashes at night, suffers daily anxiety, very disturbed sleep, constant fatigue, and regular migraines. So that's our medical history that we've been presented for, that we gathered. When we look at her family history, her mother suffers from dementia and has had DVTs in the past, deep vein thrombosis in the past. Her father rheumatoid arthritis and has recovered from colon cancer. Now let's look at what medication she's taking. So she is currently on HRT, which has been given to her by her primary care provider. She has an estrogen patch, which has been looking to manage her hot flashes and her insomnia and a couple of her other perimenopausal symptoms. She's also on an antidepressant, which is an SSRI, and she takes a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory for pain and for her migraines, for her headaches. As far as supplements go, she's taking a probiotic. She's taking DIM, melatonin, methylated B vitamins, and glutathione. So it's great. We're definitely seeing that she's had some exposure to some kind of functional or integrative. Otherwise, we wouldn't be seeing the supplements that we're seeing. But definitely, we need to question whether there is more information we can gather around Rachel that'll make better decisions. Okay, so we're going to go back to principle number 1. Know where to start. And remember what I said, when we're looking, we want to find out what is that 20% that's going to give us greatest impact. We're going to follow the purple. And in the 3x4 blueprint, we always start upstream, because we always know that if your basic core metabolic processes like detox, inflammation, oxidative stress, and methylation are not functioning optimally, it's going to be pretty hard to fix things downstream. So what are we seeing with Rachel? Well, you can see at the top of her report, it's pretty purple. And that means that the genes are having a great impact on some of these really important pathways. So I've just identified a few for you here that we're obviously going to dive deeper and understand. Detoxification is in dark purple, so that's a very high impact. And then we've got inflammation, methylation. We've also actually got oxidative stress. In her systems, we've got hormone balance and histamine overload. And also in cardiovascular health, we've got blood clotting. We've also actually got vascular health, but I've just focused on blood clotting. So this report is what I would call a loaded report. In other words, not every report has as much purple, but obviously it makes for a great case study when we really want to understand how we can dive into these genes and see what we can learn from them. Okay, so I've chosen 4 pathways to get the greatest impact. Now you can choose 3, you can choose 5, you can choose 6. Often what we say is like start with 3 or 4 as where you're going to intervene first. In 2-3 weeks' time, you're going to check in with your patient again, and you may want to add another one in. You may want to add blood clotting, you may want to add vascular health, but you don't want to start with every single pathway. Otherwise, you're going to completely overwhelm the patient and land up with like a 20-page document of what to do. So I've gone upstream, and I've chosen as the most important for me to think, and there is no right answer here. This is really comes with experience of working with the test and obviously working as an experienced practitioner. Detox, methylation, inflammation, and hormone balance are the 4 that I've chosen. And I'll show you a little bit more about why. Now I'm going to ask the question, the very important question. You don't know what you don't know. So what is it about Rachel that we didn't know from her medical history, the supplements she was taking, the conversation we had with her? What is it that we don't know about her that's going to give us such wonderful insight that we can help Rachel make better choices and help us as a provider make better treatment decisions? So let's have a look. We're going to start with the first pathway, which I chose, which is detoxification. Detox came up with a dark purple, which means that the genes have a very high impact on how this pathway may be functioning. And this is a view of what we call our interactive blueprint. It sits in our practitioner portal and actually gives you a way to kind of search and click and everything and see what's happening. All I did was click on detoxification. It's dark purple, and it gives me all the genes and the gene results that contributed to that polygenic risk score. And it also gives me the color associated with that gene variant. So I'll now know which are the genes that are causing detox to be dark purple and to be so impacted. I've given you an example of some of the genes above, but you can also see them in the right-hand side where we're looking at the purple. And of course, if you've been working with genes, you know that having a double deletion of the GSTs is already something that should come to our attention. So glutathione S transferase genes, phase 2 detoxification, so important in taking these activated kind of metabolites adding a glutathione molecule and being able to excrete them from the body. When you have a gene deletion, you actually don't have the gene, you don't have the enzyme, which means your phase 2 detoxification is going to be impacted. All right. And we're seeing COMT there. So when you see a little star, we call them our pop stars, is particular gene variants that have a greater impact than others. And in this case, Rachel has an AA COMT. And an AA COMT means that we got 3 to 4 times less COMT activity happening, which means we're not breaking down our dopamine, okay, our neurotransmitters. So keep that in mind, because remember, COMT is an interesting gene. It's a methylation gene, a detox gene, a hormone gene. I call it the Swiss Army knife of genes because the protein is involved in so many processes. Okay, so we just found something out. What did we find out? We know that optimally, we have to manage a couple of things around detox. For optimal, we want actually slow phase 1 detox. In other words, we're not pushing through activated toxins. And we want fast phase 2, where we're clearing activated toxins very fast. And we also want to manage the amount of toxins that are entering our body. Remember, this is that epigenetic exposure picture we looked at. And this would include foods that we're eating that are carrying mercury or toxins or pesticides or herbicides, but it's also all the exposures that we have, including stress exposures. And remember, G plus C equals to H. This is really what we're looking at here, except we're looking at it in terms of health. So what do we know? We know that optimal is slow phase 1, fast phase 2. And I've listed in this slide, what are the genes that will contribute to those phase 1 and phase 2? Because we want to understand the difference. We also know that Rachel has a fast phase 1 from looking at her genes. So she's activating the toxins, getting them ready to process through detox very quickly. But with that GSTs and the COMT, she really has a slow phase 2. They're kind of sitting in their very active, toxic, damaging state before they're being excreted from the body. And just as a reminder, I know it's a busy slide, is detox can manifest in many ways in the body, many different phenotypes. So just reminding us that toxicity, this buildup of toxins when they're not being excreted from the body, whether it's on the skin, in any kind of cardiovascular type symptoms, allergies, lots of autoimmune, and of course around pain. And just a reminder of some of those things that we saw when we looked at Rachel. Okay. So I'm only going to do this once. I'm only going to mention one gene because I want to just bring together again that genetics that drives insight and epigenetics that drives choices. So GSTM1, as I mentioned, glutathione S-transferase M1 is deleted. It's a phase 2 detoxification gene. It attaches a glutathione molecule, which helps the body excrete. So that's the insight. That's the G. So what is the choice? What is the action? What is the epigenetic impact that we can help our patients drive? So anyone who's heard me speak before is probably bored out of their minds talking about sulforaphane, but it's such a beautiful example to use with your patients and with your clients, which is why I keep on using it, right? So we know that we have a decreased slow phase 2. How do we use nutrition to switch on phase 2 and make it faster? We eat cruciferous vegetables, ideally raw, because they contain something called glucoraphanin and they contain an enzyme myrosinase, which when they act together, when you crush and chew your lovely broccoli salad, you produce sulforaphane. Sulforaphane is a weak pro-oxidant. We actually love weak pro-oxidants because what they do is they switch on things like transcription factors and they switch on other genes to be able to help the body fight against what's going on. We don't like strong oxidants, but we love weak pro-oxidants. And sulforaphane is an example of that. And what it does is it triggers NRF2, the transcription factor. And when we switch on NRF2, which I often describe as the master switch, the master light switch in your house, we're going to switch on about 500 genes. They decrease inflammation, improve detox, they improve oxidative stress, they improve methylation. Or our core cellular defense is impacted by switching on NRF2, and the most potent switch is cruciferous vegetables, sulforaphane, as well as phase 2 detox, because GSTM1 is only one of a family of GSTs, And sulforaphane will switch on the other GSTs that obviously aren't deleted. So I just wanted to bring us back to insight, use genetics to know what you have, action, make a nutritional decision to be able to change gene expression. It just shows why sulforaphane is awesome, because I often get asked, what about concertin? What about curcumin? What about resveratrol? If you look at this slide, look at how sulforaphane impacts NRF2 activation compared to all the other nutrients that we can have. And part of the reason, if you see that beautiful little biochemistry sitting there, is sulforaphane is a long and skinny molecule. Whereas if you look at curcumin, turmeric, concertin, they're chunkier molecules, which means that getting through those barriers, whether it's a gut barrier, is more difficult. So there's two reasons why sulforaphane is so potent. One is enzyme activation, and the other one is bioavailability. And I love this slide. It was in the original Manuka Science course that we test. Bit of an old study from 2010, but absolutely love it, where these authors try to figure out how much like fruit and vegetables do I need to eat every day to optimally switch on my genes. And so it's a great thing to do with your patient. You say, let's figure out what 600 grams look like. Go into your fridge, open up the vegetable drawer, pack it out, and weigh what does 600 grams of vegetables look like, because that's the ideal of what we're trying to get to be able to switch on genes to their most optimal. And obviously it depends on the vegetables, depends how they're cooking them, but it gives them a nice number to deal with. All right. Remember, what we're looking at is we don't know what we don't know. So what don't we know about inflammation? Inflammation came up as purple. We can have a look at some of the genes, IL-6, FOXO3. FOXO3 is super important when it comes to anti-aging. Really, really important gene there. CRP, you know about CRP, and DAO, CYP1B1 again is back. So we want to see what is happening here, because inflammation in so many of the things that she brought to us, the joint pain, the migraines, some of the other things we're seeing is fatigue is going to be about inflammation. And just a reminder, whenever we think about inflammation, we always think about oxidative stress. They go together. They are this nasty, vicious cycle where the one will switch on the other, right? So when we get an accumulation of reactive oxygen species, when we get an accumulation, it's detected by the cell, it switches on NF-kappa beta. So NF-kappa beta is also a transcription factor like NRF2, but one that switches on inflammation, whereas NRF2 switches off inflammation. And we get this trigger that happens where the inflammatory cytokines are triggering oxidative stress, and the buildup of reactive oxygen species is switching on inflammation. So we can never manage inflammation without managing oxidative stress, and vice versa. And in fact, in this patient, we had purple in both oxidative stress and in inflammation. So we want to bring them both down. All right. We don't know what we don't know. What didn't we know about what was happening with Rachel's hormones? So there are some great functional tests, we'll talk about them, that give us incredible insight into what is happening with the hormone metabolites, but it still begs the question of why. Why are we seeing the hormone metabolites, whether it's estrogen or progesterones or 4s or 16s or 2s, but why are we seeing them? What is happening in that metabolism that it's getting roadblocked, that's getting caught? And we know we again want to look at a phase 1 hormone metabolism and a phase 2. We can see CYP1B1 means that actually it's working fast. So we are switching on those hormone metabolites very quickly, but between COMT and the GSTs, we are seeing a slow ability, a decreased ability to be able to excrete those hormone metabolites that may be like quinones, and they may be the more damaging of the hormone metabolites. So looking at the genes here is very insightful. And we use this slide. We don't have time to go into it now, but we work with this a lot, which really on my left-hand side, you're going to see all the phase 1 detoxification genes. Usually a phase 1 detox gene is pretty much always going to have the word CYP, cytochrome P450 gene before. They work on pharmaceuticals. They work in phase 1 as well. What are the ones that are activating these hormones? And then our phase 2 genes around estrogen are going to be everything from COMT to UDP, all our GSTs, MSOD from an oxidative stress point of view, and one of my absolute favorites, which is quinone reductase, which is so important for managing how we remove or recycle the quinones to make sure that they don't go on to cause DNA adducts and to be mutagenic. So we use genetics to be able to understand where in this phase 1, phase 2, our hormone metabolites might be being stuck or pushed through. And just an interesting one again, we don't know what we don't know. We saw that she was suffering from headaches and migraines, and it has come up as purple for histamine. It means histamine overload means that this individual, Rachel, is not breaking down, not degrading histamine. And we know that histamine is one of the biggest trigger of headaches and migraines, but also has impacts on the immune system, inflammation, as well as gut dysbiosis and gut symptoms. And here I just put this slide in because I want to make sure that we remember that there is a very strong relationship between histamine, which is a biological amine, as well as estrogen. And remember, we were very interested in hormone balance. So we can't look at histamine or hormones out of context, because if we not degrading histamine and we're having an overload or buildup of histamine, it's generating an estrogen production, which is increasing our mast cells of generating more histamine. So we're getting another loop that we need to be aware of. And we have built this beautiful tool, which we don't have time to go in today, but is one of the tools that we build when we educate around histamine. And the only reason I included it is because I want you to be able to see that histamine is not a solitary conversation. And if you look here, you can see inflammation, detox, oxidative stress, and hormones are all part of the histamine conversation, which comes back to my question of we don't know what we don't know. So if we hadn't seen histamine in purple being driven by genetics, the genes are telling us that we're not efficient at breaking down histamine, would we have considered histamine as part of our conversation? Okay, mood and behavior, so insightful. Remember, we're looking at, we still at, we don't know what we don't know. And mood and behavior, so in her case, it's manifesting, Rachel, as anxiety, but it could be anxiety, it's depression, it's ADD, it's ADHD, it's restlessness, it's insomnia, it's all these things. But where is it coming from? Because not everyone's anxiety and depression and mood disorder comes from the same place. And these genes tell us where it's coming from. So I'm going to give you a great example of how this can go down the wrong rabbit hole, but also how it can provide great insight. So immediately we see here MAOA and COMT. Now, there's a whole lot of other genes that are very informative here, including DRD1, DRD4, which is your dopamine receptor genes, oxytocin gene, which we know how impactful oxytocin can be in managing anxiety and depression. But just thinking about the top two, which we have as dark purple, right? And let's understand what that gives us. So what happens is these genes, we either have a slow or a fast version, okay? Both for COMT and for MOA. And both of these genes, proteins or enzymes, are responsible for breaking down, degrading neurotransmitters, particularly dopamine, serotonin we're talking about. So what's really interesting to look at is what happens when these combine. And in the case of Rachel, she has MAOATT and a COMT-AA, and both of these mean that there is decreased enzyme activity. So if you look in the purple side, when we have both of these being slow, we get a buildup of neurotransmitters, which means high dopamine and high serotonin, difficulty falling asleep, easily startled, irritable. I love the workaholic one, that's probably for me, and trouble relaxing. So one of the problems we have is when we see anxiety, depression, and all these symptoms, we often treat it the same way, which is this is very likely low dopamine, low serotonin. And what happened, if you remember, one of the medications that Rachel was given was to manage her anxiety. And what did they give her? A serotonin medication. So this has given us something. Again, what did we not know? We did not know that actually the issue here was that Rachel's not breaking down dopamine and serotonin. The issue is actually high levels, not low levels. Okay, blood clotting. I don't know if anyone picked it up, but it came up as purple. If you ever see blood clotting as purple, it needs immediate attention. In this case, Rachel has heterozygous factor 5 and factor 2. So she has an allele of factor 5 and factor 2. When you combine, okay, estrogen therapy with blood clotting factor 5 and factor 2, your risk for a DVT or any thromboembolism of any kind increases exponentially. And unfortunately, this is one of those things that you don't know what you don't know until there's a blood clot. So I always say, and we can talk about this another time, it's a great conversation, is no young person should be put onto hormone therapy until it is known whether they are carrying the blood clotting factors, factor 5 and factor 2 or not. Because if they are purple and they're going onto hormone therapy, their risk is significantly increased. Okay, I'm finished talking about we don't know what we don't know, and hopefully you appreciate we actually picked up some really fantastic gems there. But let's move on because I want to make sure we've got enough time for precision functional testing. Targeted supplementation. So what happened is we had a list of supplements. And now, based on what we do know about Rachel, I'm going to make different decisions on what those supplements would be. So what am I going to stop? I'm going to stop DIM because DIM activates phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. But remember, Rachel's issue is that she had a fast phase 1 and a slow phase 2. We don't want to speed up phase 1 even faster and push everything into phase 2. So I'm going to stop DIM, and I'm rather going to use a very high quality active sulforaphane supplement, making sure that it's not an extract or a seed, it's the real deal. I'm actually going to stop the probiotic. And one of the reasons I'm going to do that is most probiotics are histamine triggers. There are some probiotics that are not, but you need to make sure that you've got the right one. So for now, because I want to really bring down histamine and get that under control, I'm actually stopping the probiotic. And I'm actually stopping glutathione. Now, there isn't world acknowledged consensus on glutathione. But when you have GST deletions, in the case, and in fact, she had 2 GST deletions, plus she had some slips in some other GST genes. Glutathione is something that works with the GST genes to help phase 2 detoxification, but actually we don't have those genes to work with. So I'm going to stop glutathione and rather use the sulforaphane to activate NRF2, NRF2, and to activate phase 2 detoxification rather than using glutathione. I'm of course going to, let's look what I am going to do. In addition to sulforaphane, I'm going to use, I really want to get a handle on that inflammation. So I'm going to use a combination of omega-3 as well as the pro-resolving mediators because I want to really bring it down. Once I feel like I've got that under hand, I might just use omega-3s. I'm going to use berberine initially, particularly around the histamine. I want to bring histamine under control. My suspicion is the headaches, the migraines, some of the allergies, the gut stuff, we can manage by just bringing histamine under control. And then I want to make sure that that we have the adequate and right methylated B vitamins in there. Because remember, methylation was purple. And of course, the B vitamins are a lot of cofactors, especially if there's a hormone story happening. We want to make sure we're supporting it with B vitamins. I do not supplement at high B vitamins because we do not need to push that hard when they're methylated. If they're methylated, they're easily going through our methylation pathways, and we don't need to overload in terms of what the levels are that we're giving, particularly around methylated folate. But I absolutely want to make sure that we've got them. So 2 questions that I have was, is hormone replacement therapy with the estrogen patch a good idea based on what we understand from hormone metabolism and also what we understand from blood clotting? Is that the best choice, or maybe is there something else we can do? And the other one is she was put on a SSRI, which is a serotonin drug. But actually what we're seeing is that we're not breaking down serotonin and dopamine. So is that the right way to manage her anxiety? Or is there something else we can do to try bring that dopamine and serotonin down and not add in more neurotransmitters kind of into the issue? So that's our targeted supplementation. And now, of course, we come to kind of the meat in the pie, excuse my weird analogy, which is precision functional testing. So for those of you who are 3x4 practitioners already, you'll be very familiar with this page. For every single pathway, we have 36 biochemical pathways that we have polygenic risk scores for. You will get something called the clinical guide. And in this clinical guide, it'll tell you all the genes that are part of that pathway. You can see them there in purple. And if you click on one of those genes, it'll teach you all about that gene. You'll get diet, lifestyle, and supplement recommendations for that pathway, for the impact level. But have a look at the bottom. You will get recommendations for what functional tests pair with that pathway. And that's what we're going to look at now. So we're coming back. We started with the chicken. I mean, coming back to the end, right? We want to see, we started with genetics. I just spoke about a lot of genetics. We spoke about what are some of the choices that we will help our patients make. But now, how do we measure? How do we see how that G plus C is actually manifesting? So in our clinical guide, we do what we call functional test pairing, where we give you what functional tests we think may be a good choice for you to be able to match if you're seeing purple in particular areas. So what I've done is gone back to those pathways that I identified and just given you some of the ideas of the kind of functional tests that are available in Rupa that we would look at. Now, obviously, you wouldn't do everything that I've given you here, but it gives you some idea of the direction. So when we have something like detoxification, and we know that it's highly impacted by genes, and we know phase 2 detoxification isn't happening optimally, we would look at organic acids, maybe use a Nutrival, and we would also do some liver enzymes, folate magnesium, some metal. I'm going to move a little bit quickly because we are running out of time. Inflammation, again, I definitely want to know things like high sensitivity CRP, and it would be really insightful to see what was happening from an essential fatty acid profile. All of these are available in Rupa. Again, organic acids in terms of methylation. We want to know homocysteine. Homocysteine is not definitive for methylation, but it's very useful to know it, as well as B12, folate, magnesium. Again, mood and behavior we can come at from different directions, depending on what we think is happening and depending on what we see in the genetic tests. So NeuroLab is a very interesting test with the HbG profile where we can try see what is happening with some of those neurotransmitters, dopamine, epinephrine, etc. And then there are also some blood tests we might want to follow up with, the thyroid, B12, folate, zinc, copper. Remember, always thinking of what are those cofactors like zinc and copper that without it, we won't be working. When I think of hormone balance, I immediately think of Dutch. We want to see how are those blockages that we're seeing in hormone balance in our genes manifesting in terms of the metabolites or the biomarkers. And again, there are some blood tests that we can do like DHEA, estradiol, estrone, and we probably want to check our thyroid as well to know what's going on. And so that kind of brings us back to where we started, which is what is the chicken and the egg? And there is no solution of one without the other, right? We want to have insight into who our patient is and what is happening at a molecular level. Where should we start? Where should we focus? What are those clinical gems, right? Let those clinical gems drive the choices, whether it's supplements, whether it's food, nutrition, exposures. And then ultimately, let that help us make the best possible decision, choosing the functional tests from the platform that are going to give us the answers to see where we are. Because remember, genetics only happens once. You only do it once. You do not repeat genetics. It's the functional testing that we're going to use to see whether the choices our patient is making with our guidance are ultimately changing their health journey and leading them towards their health goals. So that brings me to the end. Thank you very much.
Yael, thank you so much. And you handle the transition with the slant like an absolute professional. So great job on that. So folks, we are going to jump right into Q&A. So if you do have any questions, be sure to just drop them in that Q&A button down in your menu bar, and we will go through as many as possible. But with that, let's go ahead and just jump right into the very first question that we got. So what probiotics trigger histamines and which ones not? Can you give some examples? And then
I didn't.
Yeah.
It's a great question. And I have to come. I mean, my clinical team have it at their fingertips, but I'm not going to have it at my fingertips right now. So if there's a way, if we can get the name of the practitioner, I know some of my team are online and we will get them that answer for sure. Because I think there's one probiotic that you can use, but a few of them do. So let's make sure we get you the correct answer.
Perfect. Can you comment on the use of bioidentical hormones, estrogens, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA in TROCH format?
No, I can't. Where's that question? And I'll tell you why, because can I do something really naughty and ask Carrie to unmute herself and answer that for us? Dr. Carrie Jones, are you there? I think you'd probably be way more expert to be able to answer that than me.
Let's see.
Can we do that, Adrian?
Yeah, I can find Carrie. Carrie, I'm going to press the button that'll allow you to talk. And if you're able to, hop on in.
I like to stay in my swimming lane. And when it comes to hormone questions and knowing that Dr. Carrie Jones was online, I was like passing it over to you.
Oh my gosh.
For everybody, this is Dr. Carrie Jones. Dr. Carrie is the head of medical education here at Rupa Health and is the hormone queen, as we like to call her. So Carrie, just to kind of reiterate what that question was, can you comment on the use of bioidentical hormones, estrogen, progesterones, testosterone, DHEA in TROCH format? And I hope I'm pronouncing TROCH correctly.
Yeah, some people call it TROCH, some people call it troche. Basically, it's the sublingual dissolvable kind that you put in between your tooth and your gum or under your tongue. I'm not sure how, to the extent they want us to comment on it, Laura, but it's definitely a viable option. A lot of practitioners do it. Do be aware, anything that you put in your mouth, even if you're letting it dissolve, most of our patients get tired of waiting for it to dissolve and they will end up swallowing some of it. So it turns into a part sublingual, part oral. So as Dr. Yale talked about the blood clot risk of that particular patient, she would not be a good candidate for a troche or troche estrogen because she is going to end up swallowing some of it out of it just in her saliva. And then, of course, oral estrogen has a lot of risk that we, don't want in the female body. But the troche or troche option is very, very common. Absolutely. Just know you will get a hybrid because people get irritated and they end up swallowing some of it in their saliva.
Brilliant.
Dr. Carrie Jones, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you. Thanks, Doctor. I love the fact that you ask me these kind of questions, everyone, but I really want to make sure that I stick to my expertise, which is nutrigenomics. And so I will decline to answer questions that I'm not 100% confident in, but, knowing that I've got Dr. Jones on the other side, who really is the hormone queen. But I do see some questions that I can answer, Adrian. So
absolutely. Let's keep it to the genetics here. And folks, could you please use the Q&A button and not the chat to ask your questions?
Oh, okay. Yes, I was looking at the chat.
How often are the SNPs updated on this panel? Meaning, how often are there new information incorporated into the SNPs that can get sorted into or out of the different pathways?
Okay, so we have a team of geneticists whose sole job it is to manage the literature that's coming through. So we have 157 gene variants at the moment that have been passed through what we call Darwin being our methodology of scoring whether a gene should be in our genetic test or not. Our team works in kind of a continuous process of updating and reviewing SNPs that are coming in. This often happens through the literature where we're reading new literature and we see an interesting SNP coming through, or alternatively, a SNP that has been reviewed by us and failed Darwin, so it didn't make it into the test, but we see some interesting literature come through, redo Darwin and see if it makes it. We generally update our report once every 6 months, where we will add somewhere between 5 to 10 SNPs into our report and rescore SNPs that are currently in there. This doesn't require anyone to do another swab, right? This is an immediate update where you simply download the report again and it'll automatically update the results. So I would say we work on like a biannual update of all our SNPs. And every year it goes up about another 10.
Beautiful. Is there a guide for the 3x4 genetic testing?
So I'm not quite sure what you mean by a guide, but we have...
Let me ask the way I ask.
Yeah.
Resources are available for practitioners interested in using the 3x4 test to continue to not only learn, but ensure that they're providing the best possible, experience for themselves.
Okay, well, that sets me up very well, Adrian. So there's 2 different ways that we work with practitioners. So the first, and is quite extraordinary, it's called 3x4 Community. It's a platform that you can join, anyone can join, anywhere in the world as a practitioner. And it basically on this platform is all our education, all our mentorship, all our events, all our Q&A, all the research articles. So it's an app you can download on your phone or you can go online and basically, if you want to dip your toe into nutrigenomics and just start learning, or if you want to go on to be the best expert in your space in nutrigenomics, you will never run out of education. So Adrian mentioned that I used to have an education company called Manuka Science. That was the foundation of 3x4 Community, but it's much, much more because we not only provide about multiple levels of education from like really basic 5 minutes to kind of a CEU accredited course. We also have a full mentorship program where we run big group mentorships where you can bring your patient's report and sit with a mentor and get help before you see your patient to have it interpreted and ask any questions. So that's one element of how we support 3x4. We also have practitioner portal where the tests are ordered. And on there, we have something called the clinical guide. And the clinical guide is like a nutrigenomics textbook, and it's actually embedded into the report so that every single SNP that we test, you just need to click on it. It'll tell you what is the SNP, what is the background, what is the risk allele, what are the clinical notes, what are the frequency, everything you need to know about it. And that was the image you saw. What are the functional tests that we paired with it? We also pair supplements, diet and lifestyle recommendations. We have food lists. So it's like a nutrigenomics textbook that's kind of embedded behind the report. So between those two engagements with 3x4, you will always have answers and be supported no matter.
I love that. And where can folks find that information? I know you mentioned the 3x4 community. Is that just on the website? Where can they get access to that?
I mean, literally, you can go to the web. If you go to 3x4 genetics website, you can join the community, you can sign up for the portal. You can also just go to 3x4 community and sign up that way. But the best way is actually to go through 3x4 genetics website, because we like everyone to have the same login with their community, and that way you don't have to have two different logins. But there's also an email address, a network at 3x4genetics.com. I'm sure someone from our team's on, they can just write it in, network.
Someone just posted it in the chat, so that's perfect.
Great, because they will be able to get you all the answers, show you where to go. But literally, I mean, you can sign up for 3x4 community, even if you're not in the US, even if our test is not for sale in a country that you're in. We love you to come and join us. It's multidisciplinary. We welcome everyone, no matter where you are in your learning journey around genetics. It's a great place to start.
I love that. Yes, that's fantastic. And similarly here at Rupa, no matter where you're located, even though we only service currently in the US, if you're outside, we always offer these educational materials, no matter where you're located. Does 3x4 offer a certification course?
So we have a couple of levels of education. So we have a basic certification, which is called the Blueprint certification, which is our current product. And that one is really short, it's about 90 minutes. And then we have what we call our foundations in nutrigenomics, which actually is a non-branded, non-3x4 course that we offer that has CU accreditation with ANA, as well as with the Diet Nutrition Academy, where you can get lots and lots of points for it. And you get a different certification for that. And we actually rate our practitioners. They kind of earn kudos from us. And obviously those that get the foundations in nutrigenomics certification is the highest one we offer.
Amazing. And we'll be sure to send a follow-up, that information within the follow-up email so folks know exactly where. It sounds like people really want to are interested in checking out and potentially getting certified. And everybody needs those CEU, right? Everybody's got to get those credits.
Exactly, yeah.
Do you have any comment on the genes that cause ADHD?
So what's interesting, I gave a talk a while back on the genetics of stress resilience or mental resilience, I can't remember the exact title, but it was really interesting because what happened was I looked at ADHD, ADD, bipolar, anxiety, depression, schizophrenia. And it's a great slide, I'll have to share it with you, but when you look at the genes that sit underneath, they're pretty much the same, right? So there isn't specific genes for ADD or specific genes for bipolar or specific genes for anxiety. They're actually very similar genes because what are they? They're the genes that moderating how all our different kind of HPA axis, our neurotransmitters, our dopamine, serotonin. So they're not very different. What is really interesting is, remember when we say we don't know what we don't know, is when we know that we're manifesting with kind of ADHD symptoms and we look at that genetic panel, we can see what is happening in terms of our neurotransmitters, our dopamine receptors. So the genes are actually not very different, but how they manifest and the resilience around that manifestation is what is really interesting. And so many of our practitioners, many work with patients with ADD and ADHD, anxiety, depression, and find the genetics to be really insightful in kind of unpicking where is it coming from? Because that's the thing is, even if it's ADD, it can still be coming from kind of different G plus Cs, different genetics plus different choices.
Beautiful. Any comment on the gene connection with PMDD?
Where are we? Why? I've just had an absolute blank. Where are we?
No worries. Final question down below. And just a heads up, everybody, I know that we are at the hour mark. So if you have to jump, we appreciate you stopping by and joining us today. We'll go with a couple more questions before finalizing. And again, we are always recording this, and we'll send out a copy of the recording within the coming days once we have the opportunity to edit the videos. So it would be the last question in the Q&A. What is the gene connection with PMDD?
What is PMDD? I just can't remember.
It's a great question.
Help me. What is PMDD?
Post premenstrual dysphoric disorder.
Oh my gosh, no wonder. I didn't get that one. Okay, premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Thank you. Thanks, Harriet. So again, there isn't any one answer. It's about understanding, I would say and I don't know this disorder very well, so I'm not going to be an expert on this, but what I would want to understand is I would understand what's happening in hormone balance genetics. Like how are those gene metabolites been happening? And I would also want to understand, again, upstream, our detox, inflammation, methylation, oxidative stress, and mood potentially, because they're all connected, right? We all want to know which genes might be impacting that. So again, my apologies that I'm not familiar with that disorder. But the one reason, just to maybe finish off, is that, I saw some of the other questions very, very quickly. And thanks for everyone for putting in information about the probiotics, is that the reason 3x4 does not break up its test into a sports test or a mind test or a health test or a diet test or a nutrient test is because you don't know what you don't know. So sometimes when we're looking for answers, whether it's premenstrual dysphoric disorder or something else, and we assume we're going to find them in a particular place, we often find them somewhere else, whether it's upstream, whether it's in a nutrient. So one of the reasons 3x4 has chosen to sell only one product with everything inside is because often as a practitioner, it's difficult to be able to make a decision on which genetic test, whether I should buy one that's just around the mind or buy one that's around sport or buy one that's around weight management, because we don't know what we don't know. And we always want to make sure we go upstream to cellular, then to systems, and going down until we finish it. And that's how we find the answers. So maybe just tying it up like that. I know there were some other questions. Hopefully my team have answered some of them.
No, that was so helpful. And honestly, that was going to be my final question. Why should the folks move forward with 3x4 since there are a number of options out there? And you mentioned, you basically just answered that, right? You want to be as comprehensive as possible because you don't know what you don't know.
And if I can have one more minute. So why would you use 3x4 as a test?
Yeah.
It's a great question because it is crazy out there. There are so many genetic testing companies. So I always say, let me just give you a couple of points. The first thing is polygenic risk scores. Single SNPs by themselves should not be used to make diet, lifestyle, supplement, or functional test recommendations. So if these are all the red flags, right? They're just not that powerful. You want to group them together. Point two, have a look at the company, look at their clinical team, look at their science team, look at their science advisory board, know who they are and what expertise they bring. Point three, have a look in terms of the education and the mentorship and the support and the community that they're going to offer. Do you have somewhere to go to be able to ask a question and get a good science answer that is really backed up? And then the last one is, you shouldn't have to choose whether the issue that you're dealing with is a weight issue or a brain issue or a detox issue. If a genetics company is breaking it up and selling you a separate detox panel or a separate methylation panel, you are not going to have the information that you need to be able to figure out where is it coming from, where to start. So I think probably that is the best I can do in the last minute.
No, that was wonderful. Dr. Yael Jaffe, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. And folks, for those of you who are able to stick around for the next 5-10 minutes or so, what we're going to do is show you exactly how to order this test. I know that question came in through the chat a couple of times, but hey, where the heck can we actually get access to this 3x4 testing? And that's what I'm here to discuss with you. And again, thank you so much, Yael. That was fantastic. You're welcome to stick around and see exactly how to operate. I know you've seen it before, but if you want to see how to order the test, that's what I'm going to show you right now.
Thank you, Adrian. And thank you so much for having me. I am actually going to go off video, but I am going to watch so that I can see how it gets ordered. Thanks so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. That's actually important. So For those who don't know me, my name is Adrian Martinez. I'm the head of practitioner partnerships here at Rupa Health. And really what that long title means is that I'm here to ensure that you as a practitioner are set up for success, whether it's hosting these fantastic webinars with practitioners like Yale herself to hopping on demos like I'm going to show you right now. So again, Rupa Health, who are we? What do we do? Why do we host these calls every single week? We are a functional medicine lab platform, and we are designed with the intention of making life easier when it comes to lab testing. So everything from ordering your tests to managing the patient experience to learning about all the tests on the market. How do we do that? What we've done is we've created our platform that, one, is free to sign up for. So it costs nothing to sign up. There's no subscription fee or anything like that to create an account with us. And we've brought on over 30 different labs, over 3,000 different tests all in one place. So now as a practitioner, I have a one-stop shop. I don't have to go to each individual portal to, one, create an account to order my tests or to manage my results. I just have one Rupa Health account and I have everything in one place. So what I'm showing you is the Discovers Labs tab. So if I want to hop in here and I want to search by specific test, I can browse by category. I can even search by biomarker. And if I want to hop in and browse by category of all these different tests, I can do so. I can open up and see all the different lab companies that we work with. Of course, we work with 3x4 Genetics, but we also work with other companies. I know Dr. Jaffe mentioned Dutch. We, of course, have them on our platform, as well as 29 plus other labs. Again, over 3,000 different tests on our platform. And if you're newer to the testing space and you're interested in exploring and comparing different tests, we allow you to compare tests on our platform as well, breaking down everything from cost to biomarkers to turnaround times, downloading sample instructions. Again, we want to be a resource available to you to help streamline business. To start an order on our platform is simple. You just need the patient's first name, last name, and email address. From there, we take care of everything else directly with the patient. This allows you to operate more efficiently and effectively, as well as save time, right? That's the end goal here, saving time on all of the admin, all of the support work to ensure that you can get that time back to whether it's seeing more patients, to playing golf, whatever the heck you want to do, right? Again, it's your time to get back by working through Rupa Health. You can see in this order screen, you can do things such as setting up custom bundles. Custom bundles are sets of tests, sets of blood panels, or a combination of any tests from any lab that we work with. One click, they're added into your cart. Down below, you can create a favorites list. So individual tests that you're commonly ordering, you can put a little heart next to it. And so if I want to order that 3x4 genetics test with that blueprint report, but I also want to order the Dutch test that Dr. Jaffe mentioned a moment ago, I can go ahead and add that into my cart straight away. And once I'm ready to press send and place that order, I just click send to patient, and that's how easy it is to order from 30 plus tests or 30 plus labs, all within a matter of seconds directly from Rupa Health. We'll streamline it. Down below, you can find any test that you are looking for, right? So again, we can find any test all at our fingertips. Let's talk about how our pricing works. So we offer wholesale practitioner prices here at Rupa Health. What that means is the same price that you would get having an account directly with the labs is the same price that we offer here at Rupa Health. The way that we generate our revenue is simple. There's a flat 7% processing and ordering fee on each order. So what that means is that it is the cost of the test plus 7%. So in this case, we have the 3x4 genetics test for $299 plus that 7% is a shade under $320 total. What's great about that is that 7% is paid for by whoever pays for the test. So we can actually manage billing directly with your patient. So if you're having us bill your patient directly, then in that scenario, your patient will be the one paying that 7%, which means Rupa is completely free for you. The alternative being you pay for the cost of the test yourself and manage billing separately with the patient, right? Either way, the cost is the exact same. But what's fantastic about Rupa is if you want to add additional fees to it, for example, you want to add an interpretation fee to your order, since that is going to be what's taking up time out of your day, you can add that fee directly through our platform. Your patient will pay that. It will connect to your bank account through Stripe, and those funds will go directly into your account through Rupa. Again, offloading any billing requirement that would be on your shoulders, something less that you have to deal with, right? You can add notes for the patient. You can add notes for Rupa. You can even add ICD-10 codes. So we don't accept insurance directly here at Rupa, but you can add these ICD codes. And from there, we will automatically create a super bill for your patient, which will allow them to submit to their insurance for potential reimbursement. If that's it, I go ahead and click send to patient. Now, once I click send to patient, we can go ahead and take it from there over here at Rupa Health. So a really important aspect to Rupa is that we manage the patient experience end to end. And by that, I mean, we will not only reach out to the patient to let them know that the kits have been ordered, but we can also manage billing. We'll go ahead and ship the kits to the patient. We'll handle any support, any specimen issues, how to fill out the requisition form. If there's a blood draw required, we can handle that as well. So a what I'm saying here is that we will take care of all of those necessary, I guess, pain points that are oftentimes required and take time out of your day, out of your clinic's day, off your shoulders and onto ours. We'll follow up with the patient, and then from there, you're notified as the result comes in. What does that all look like, right? So we will go ahead and reach out to the patient. Hi, Joshua. Dr. Jordan has ordered these tests for you. And a really important call out and a unique component to Rupa is the different payment solutions that we offer. So not only can we accept credit or debit for these tests, but we can also accept HSA, we can accept FSA, and we can also set up a 3-month interest-free payment plan with the patient directly. From there, we'll collect all the necessary information to complete the order. We'll shoot over an email to the patient once the kits have been shipped out, and then we will send over another additional communication that breaks down all the instructions for each of the tests, how to fill out the requisition form, and if there is a blood draw required with that test, we will even help the patient coordinate that blood draw. We can either customize that to have them instructed to go wherever you would like them to go, or we will send over the necessary resources for them to be able to get a blood draw within their area. But if they do have any questions, whether it's support related, whether it's, hey, I want a mobile phlebotomist in my area, are there any options? They reach out to our team and we will help facilitate answering all those questions. You can see an example of the instructions over here on the right-hand side. So they're extremely comprehensive, breaking down everything that the patient will need to complete their test, but they're also very user-friendly. So that's what I always love to call out, is the fact that we've created a very user-friendly process for collection instructions. But if anything goes wrong and there is a collection that needs to be retaken, we will coordinate that directly with the lab and the patient. You don't need to be involved, but it will help save you time because, again, generally that would be on your shoulders for that recollection. You're notified as the results come in. We don't send the results to the patient without your consent. You have full control over how and when the patient receives those results, but you receive an email, and from there, you just bop right back into your Rupa Health dashboard, and you're able to view all of those results right here. Now, let me show you exactly what that looks like. So this is an example patient who has 4 tests from 4 different labs. I'm able to see, for example, when the samples arrived at the lab, when I can expect those results to come in. I can download those results straight away. This is where I'll be able to send those results to my patients. And then additionally, I can actually schedule a clinical consultation with the lab that I'm ordering the tests for if I do need some assistance interpreting those results. Through 3x4, you're going to want to be able to schedule that time with them. You have that blueprint report. But if you want to be involved in their communities, by all means, please get as involved as possible because they'll be able to point you in the right directions through one of their communities, as well as the resources that they provide you with. So with that, y'all, that is how you go ahead and place your orders on Rupa, how we take care of the patient experience, how you're going to manage all of your orders on Rupa. Now, the final thing I want to show you here is Rupa University. You are all actually part of Rupa University right now. This conversation with Yale is one of the many pieces of educational content that we create. These webinars happen on a weekly basis, Wednesdays at the same time. So you'll see we have this one that we just did with Yale. We have one upcoming as well with Genova next week. We've got a few more on the pipeline, but you'll also have access to all the recordings of these webinars along with the slides. So if you happen to miss one, or you just want to go back and look, you have access to all of them available right here within our library. Additionally, we even do boot camps. So if you want more of a deep dive into, for example, connecting the dots on female hormones with Dr. Carrie Jones, you can go ahead and join these live boot camps. These are a paid option, but they do come with a free test that you can do. So with that, y'all, my name is Adrian Martinez. I'm going to go ahead and share my contact information here and see if there's any questions that came through the chat. But if you do have any questions or interested in signing up for Rupa Health, please reach out to me. I'm happy to walk you through a more personalized demonstration and answer any questions that you have live. So do the results go to the patient or the doctor? The results go to the doctor. However, there is a setting that you can enable that will allow the results to go directly to the patient as well. So if you don't want to have to send the results to the patient every time manually, you can automatically release the results to the patients. Additionally, actually, to build on top of that, we do have integrations with EHRs as well. So if you are working with Practice Better, if you're working with Elation, Optimantra, soon to be Serbo, and a handful of others, ODX, we can actually have these results imported directly into your EHR. So very powerful tool. Again, at the end of the day, y'all, what Rupa Health, our mission is to bring root cause medicine to the world. And by making life easier for access as well as time savings for the clinics and the patients, along with education, those are the most powerful tools that we're using to allow this access. I will wait another 10 seconds. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask. But if not, y'all, thank you so much for joining today. Again, my name is Adrian Martinez. I'm the head of practitioner partnerships here at Rupa Health. So if you do need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm more than happy to always set up some time. And I love seeing the familiar names in here. Simona, great to see you again. Doris, always a pleasure. So thank y'all so much again. Looking forward to seeing you next time.